Good evening, Bills Mafia. Happy Monday, and welcome to Buffalo Late Night. It's August 1st. I have no idea how we're at August already, but here we are. I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. You can find me at the Thomas DeLoss. Tonight we're talking Bills camp, and we have two of my favorite guys, two guys that I've been following for a long time. Joining us tonight on Buffalo Late Night, we have the editor-in-chief and brand manager of Buffalo Rumblings, Mr. Matt Warren. And guy that's been on this show a couple times already, the co-owner and co-host of Cover One Buffalo, Greg Tompsett. Gentlemen, good evening.
What's going on?
Good to be here.
I'm jealous of Matt's mason jar. They look nice.
It's
nice.
It's just cranberry water. It's just cranberry water.
Oh, I thought you had a cocktail going.
I mean, whatever you want to tell us, it's fine.
Can't win for trying. No.
Yeah, of course. So here at Buffalo Late Night, we are proud to be sponsored by Dentist for Kids and Travis Matthew, and we will be speaking about them later throughout the show. Also, if you are watching, whether it's on Twitter or Twitch or YouTube, hop over to YouTube. Come and join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. We're trying to push people towards that, just because obviously you can communicate a little bit better. But no matter what platform you're on, be free, and feel free to share that, subscribe, like, and let us know how you enjoy the show and what you want to see going forward. Now, Greg, Matt, let's kind of chat. First topic tonight I wanted to get into was Sue Robinson, the independent arbiter for the NFLPA and NFL, announced her findings and recommended 6 games for Deshaun Watson and no financial implications. Now, for an interesting breakdown, Terrell Pryor had 5 games for free tattoos he received in college. Myles Garrett got 6 games for boinking Mason Rudolph with a helmet. Michael Kendricks had 8 games for insider trading, and Calvin Ridley had 1 year for a non-criminal betting on a game that he wasn't even playing in. And Deshaun Watson at this time has a more lucrative contract than all 4 of these players combined and is losing less money than any of them did. What is your thoughts on all of that? And aside from that, do you think Goodell's going to step in and do anything? What's your thoughts on it?
Nice light topic. I'll let you start, Matt.
Oh, well, I think it's way too low. I'm certainly not alone with this. When you read the arbiter's ruling or mediator, I can't remember what her actual title is. Yeah. She talks about he's definitely guilty. She thought he was guilty. The NFL presented a great case, but it felt like her hands were tied on the number of games that she was allowed to give him. And, for me, if you look at, even if you only look at the 4 cases that she looked at, and give him 6 games for each of those, that makes more sense to me than giving 6 for the whole thing. And so I just thought it was too low. I thought he was going to get a full season. I think it's too low.
I don't know that anyone's going to anyway. So I live in Cleveland. I can tell you, I'd love to say everyone, it's not everyone. I'd love to say everyone feels like this is too low, but it's not the case. The vast majority of people, and I think a very high majority outside of Cleveland, feel like it was not sufficient. Right. So I'm not going to rail on about hey, it should have been 10, 12, a year, permanent. Everyone thinks it should have been more. I did anticipate it being lower than everyone would like, and I think that the way that it was structured, all the things in the new CBA where management and ownership is supposed to be held to a higher standard, and then nothing happens to Robert Kraft, to Jerry Jones, to Daniel Snyder. I don't particularly blame Sue Robinson for interpreting the Ezekiel Elliott situation, Ben Roethlisberger, other people in similar civil accusation without criminal case precedent, and then also the fact that, hey, you're supposed to hold ownership to a higher standard. And then I think she put some verbiage in there about this is the highest penalty any player has ever received for a non-violent crime. And the most disappointing thing for me was comments like that where the interpretation that what happened wasn't violent or wasn't of a sexual predatory nature. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole on this show, but it was just disappointing that I understood the technical semantics of what she was saying, but to take all those accusations and just throw them into a bucket of, well, there was technically no physical coercion and there was no physical force, so technically, like, I don't know, it felt gross, and it felt icky to have it just dismissed and minimized like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I will say, I think for a guy like Goodell, who, like Gary Bettman, they both fumbled through everything. I mean, I swear to God, every time the NFL does something, it's just like, you just expect the worst possible outcome. I feel like this is an opportunity for Goodell to come out the right side of all of this and kind of look like a hero. Not a hero per se, but to finally make a decision that actually is like competent, I suppose. I mean, I don't know. If
maybe for the first time, make a popular decision. He would actually make a decision that would be popular for the first time.
Right.
He really is between a rock and a hard place, though, because of the new CBA. It really takes that power away from him. And now, I mean, he's got no problem looking like a jerk. Like, he's done that before. But, I mean, I really do think that if he tries to extend this, especially if he tries to double it, like I'm talking full season right here. Yeah. Like, if he goes from 6 to 17, that's almost tripling the the punishment. And so it would be a big leap for that first test case of this new arbiter system. And it would look really bad, I think, on the NFL and him. And that's, I think, why the NFLPA got ahead of it yesterday and said, hey, we're gonna go by the arbiter's decision, and we hope that the NFL does too. Like, they've been playing that little game since at least yesterday, but longer than that, sure.
Yeah. And it's a super slippery slope, because the whole reason that this new independent third-party arbiter that was there, because they didn't want Goodell to be judge, jury, and executioner, and it is a super weird setting to now have the very first decision that they make have him go, that's not enough, I'm going to decide myself.
Right. And he could still be that judge, jury, and executioner. Right. Like, he has the ultimate power to do that if he wants to.
The one area I'm curious if he went down, and I think I saw this, I think Florio put it out there and a couple other people had it, is that I wonder if part of the way to make it more tangible is, I saw someone propose that you basically turn last year's time on the commissioner's exempt list into a suspension by fining him the $10 million that he made last year. And that now you're saying that, hey, we're actually turning that into a suspension. And, giving him credit for time served isn't the same thing, but he didn't play last year. I at least think that's something. So I'm curious if that's the way he'll go, versus, is there really anything to say, hey, that's not enough, I'm going to show you it's 8 games now. He's just going to get made fun of. It's just going to look worse if it's like some incremental 8 or 10 or 12. Like, if he doesn't go to Matt's end of it, if you don't go from 8 to the season, is that actually going to satisfy any of the people out there for blood, wanting heads on pikes? So I'm curious. I really don't, I can't even guess where he's going to go. I don't know.
Right. And I feel like at this point, there's got to be, he's got to be speaking with internal lawyers from the league, because it's not just the what's going to happen with the NFLPA. There's the optics of sponsors, NFL league-wide sponsors that might be associated. There's female-run organizations that are going to have to sit here and probably look at it and say, okay, do we continue, aligning ourselves with an organization that basically just said 6 games? That's fine, for 24 accusations against, an NFL player. I think it's going to be something that Goodell has. I don't know how you get this right, and I think he should have avoided the arbiter completely, but and he just did it himself and made the decision. But the problem is, I think he was trying to take any possible blame off of him for all the other decisions he's made wrong thus far.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's I have a feeling he's going to find a new way to put his foot in his mouth, but we'll see.
Liz does. Moving on, we got a little bit of a snapshot that Andre Reed is trying to scout Odell Beckham Jr., which, I mean, God bless him. Always love that. It's not Jim Kelly this time, so that's good. What are your thoughts? What do you guys think about a potential maybe later season signing of an OBJ to add firepower and a playoff push?
I'll start this one. One, I've made this point a couple times. There's a lot of players that can look selfish or not team oriented in bad environments, and I think there's a lot of players that would have looked that way in New York, in Cleveland. We have one that kind of looked that way in Minnesota, who is now a beloved team elected captain in our locker room and looks fantastic. And you can't ask for a better example than a guy who fit right into an uber talented roster in LA, helped lead them to where they went, and in my opinion was on pace to be the Super Bowl MVP until his knee blew out just after halftime. I have a lot of other positions I'm more concerned with than receiver right now. It seems like we have an embarrassment of riches at receiver with how everyone's playing in camp. But if you're telling me there's a chance that, you look at what happened to Tampa after they lost Godwin and all those guys went out all at once, and all of a sudden Brady's sitting there with nobody to throw to. And you're telling me, well, we're not really sure who's going to play and get the snaps. Yeah, maybe I'll try to figure that out. So it's not a pressing need, but anybody who says we don't need him, I mean, that's a super talented dude.
Right. That's exactly the point of it all. Is that you're not just talking about some cusp guy, or like in the past 20 years where he was a kind of a decent free agent, but it wasn't anything to kind of balk at. You're talking about a bona fide stud that you line him opposite of. What I said yesterday, I don't know about you, but I think you put Diggs in the slot and you have Gabe Davis, and then you have
the cool part is all three of them can play snaps in the slot.
Right. But go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry, I jumped right in there.
I was just, I don't think you need him, but why would you say no to that particular scenario? He comes in November for a stretch run or something, and I'm not really worried about it. I think the Bills have a strong enough locker room for it. It's not like Odell Beckham Jr. is going to come in and, have everybody turn against Josh Allen or something like that. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. So
there was a time where adding a guy to this locker room or to the Bills locker room would have become the dominant personality in there. It's just not the case.
Stephon Diggs, like you said before, came in. I mean, he's a dominant personality in that locker room, but they have a bunch of them right now. And I think if someone came in and acted like that, I don't think it would last very long between, your guys on defense and your guys on offense.
Yeah.
Right. And like Greg said, I don't think, the problem is with a guy like Odell, because he is very polarizing. It was easy to point the finger at him as being that kind of, whale in the room, the guy that was just causing all the drama. But I mean, in the Giants, they were terrible. I mean, they've just been kind of just a hodgepodge run organization. And then we already know Jimmy Haslam is just a tire fire in Cleveland. So it's not ultra surprising that things kind of went upside down for him everywhere he's gone until Los Angeles. Aside from that, Travis Matthews Innovative Fabrics keep you looking and feeling your best, whether you're on the golf course or strolling through town, offering supreme comfort for every aspect of your life. With clothing that's quick drying, wrinkle resistant, and super soft, you can move seamlessly from work to play. Get 20% off your first order at travismatthew.com. You'll find the link right on Buffalo Late Night social media pages. Nextly, which I mentioned this to you guys, not only has Tyreek Hill been very bullish and outspoken on Tua, but his teammates have, and now apparently the fans are in tow. What are we doing? Are they compensating? We saw a 65-yard bomb. Gentlemen, what's your take? I don't even know what to say anymore about it.
I've got one friend that's a Dolphins fan, and it's just so much fun to talk to him. They have so much optimism, and I'm of an age where I had said optimism about, JP Lossman or Trent Edwards or, whoever. Like,
All of them.
like, I mean, there were flashes. Like, there was this moment where you thought like Tyrod was going to be the guy or whoever was going to be the guy, and it just never happened. And like, you saw the flaws that were going to bring them down, but you wanted to ignore them for 1 week of unpadded training camp practices, or whatever. And so I'll buy it when I see it for I don't even more than a game or 2 games or 3 games in a row. I mean, this is the same guy that was benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick in the fourth quarter of games. It's the same guy who was like bottom in the NFL in yards of completion last year and yards per attempt. And just like, until I see something from him, like, I think they did a good job getting him Tyreek Hill. I think it's going to really help pay off for him in like those dink and dunk yards after the catch, stuff like that. But I mean, I'm certainly not buying that Tua is going to become a top half of the NFL quarterback this season.
So I'll start by being gracious in the fact that like no snide side comments, no snarky anything. That throw was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Like I would have lost a bet if someone bet me, do you think Tua Tagovailoa can throw a football more than 64 yards? I would have bet American currency that the answer to that was no. Right. So just seeing that, I obviously have some Dolphins friends and people that I've become friends with online. And I'm like, no, I'm not even going to take anything away from you. That throw was awesome. It was. So I get the hype. I get the excitement because, like Matt said, the weapons are real. Like if you told me that the Dolphins trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, I wouldn't feel good. Like I would be like, man, that's probably not that cool. Like I don't want someone who I think can in rhythm get the ball in the intermediate to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Mike Gesicki, and like I don't like that. But I hate to remind Dolphins fans, there was like a training camp in preseason where I think Nathan Peterman had 2 incomplete passes the whole time. When there's no bullets flying, it's easy to stand back there and wait and take a crow hop and heave the ball as far as you can. Like, it's not that hard to do that. So when the real bullets are flying, and they did, Teron Armstead was a legit addition. The right side of their line is still a disaster. And I got into it with one guy, and he's like, well, tell me, who do you think's going to start on the right side of the line? And I said, I'm not really sure. It's going to be one guy who can't block Von Miller or another guy who also can't block Von Miller, and I'm not sure which one is going to win it, but one of them guys is going to start at right tackle. So we'll see. I get the excitement, and if I was in their position and we went out and got a bunch of shiny toys, I'd be excited too. And if I saw that highlight, I'd be excited too. So I'm going to give them this time to bask in all of it, because reality's coming and they'll find out.
I remember vividly when we had Tyrod Taylor and we signed Charles Clay. I was believing that this team was going to be something special. Little did I know, neither of them was all that great. So
they ended the drought.
Hey.
Yeah. Yep, they backed that thing up like an 8th grade dance. So it's it's good, but whatever happens, it happens. I'll say this: with Tua, man, I just can't even, like, the dude had the Bills playing most of their backups and got mollywopped. Not like it wasn't like it was a close game and like the Bills just pulled it out. Like, no, they got mollywopped. And they were playing for a playoff spot. Like, you can't come in and say because Tyreek Hill's here now the team's going to be a playoff contender. Let's take steps. Let's steps. We haven't even gotten out of the training camp times. Let's move that way. But I love Jets fans, Dolphins fans, Patriots fans, and aside from that, I love that. All I'm hearing is that Mac Jones looks atrocious in training camp. That's music to my ears.
Best shape of his life, though, probably. I don't know.
He saw an ab that one time. It was pretty cool.
Okay, so let's move into tonight's topics, guys. Thus far, we are a little over a week into training camp. From what we've seen and heard, and I don't know about you, Matt, but I know Greg was at training camp this past week. Is there a player whose stock may be falling, excuse me, due to lack of performance or potentially being outworked by one of his teammates?
The name that's at the top of the list, at least for me, has been Jamison Crowder. I mean, I thought he was going to come in and maybe not have a lockdown on that slot receiver job. I mean, there was still going to be a battle, but I was pegging, Isaiah McKenzie to go from, I don't know, whatever it was, 20% of the snaps, 25% of the snaps, up to like maybe 40%. And Crowder would eat the rest of those Cole Beasley snaps. And now I think it's going to be absolutely flipped. Crowder comes in, has 1 day of practice, then's out almost an entire week with soreness. We don't even know what was sore. We just know he was sore. So, him falling down is because he wasn't on the field, but also Isaiah McKenzie has come in and just absolutely played his butt off and been lights out over and over again, doing things we've never really seen from him before against zone defense and things like that. And so I've been really interested to see that. I wasn't expecting McKenzie's role in the offense to jump so far, with the conversation about going to maybe 2 tight ends a little bit more, with the conversation of Crowder coming in and his longer history of production in the NFL. And so it's just been very interesting to watch that, because that's a starting role on this team. It's, that Cole Beasley role is like 2/3 of snaps, right in there, maybe more. So that has been the most surprising thing so far for me for camp, as far as somebody's stock going down because of somebody else playing really well.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's spot on. It's number one with a bullet, and I figured that would be there, so I tried to dig around to look and see if there's anybody else that I would put in that bucket. Maybe Christian Benford or a Elijah Green, like the group of players that were kind of fighting for that 6th DB, 53rd spot kind of guy, because Cam Lewis and Nick McLeod seemed to just be taking that, and running with it. That, I was of the belief that, you look at the build of Christian Benford and he's kind of like a Seren Neal, and they might be targeting the Tywan Jones replacement idea. That seems to be, Cam Lewis and Nick McLeod seem to have separated themselves in that battle. So that's
I was looking for my second list in case you said McKenzie first, and that's the 2 I picked too. Is those guys, and it's been really interesting to see that. But then today, Joe Buscaglia in his recap said that Benford's been having a really under the radar great camp, and so I've seen both of those from different beat reporters saying Benford's been good and Benford's been nowhere. So that's. I haven't been out there. I was away all week, but so I haven't seen it from my own eyes. But I know you were out there.
And I will say, Lewis, the hype around Lewis and McLeod was real. Like, they flashed multiple times. They looked really
Lewis
good.
Looks fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it was legit. Like, I got why people were talking about them. I said maybe a little bit elsewhere, the depth linebacker stuff, in that if anybody thought that, with Klein out, maybe this is Medikevich's moment to be more than a special teams guy, or Joe Giles Harris to fight for a spot, or Balin Spector again a later round, and it seems to clearly be Terrell Dotson and versus Terrell Bernard. Like, it just seems to be those two completely separated themselves from the rest of that group, and a legit fight for who's linebacker 3 still, but both of them are going to be on the roster. Both of them are going to be the 4-phase special teams guys. One of them is going to have the primary 3rd linebacker role, but both of them might get snaps. So that one, they kind of separated themselves as well. But it's Isaiah McKenzie leaving Crowder in the dust right now.
Right. And I like the quote today from Sean McDermott. He said the biggest adjustment for Isaiah McKenzie is potentially stepping in a full-time role, and teams game planning him.
He doesn't let things like that slip often.
Right, and that's what I thought was really telling, because for the longest time, McKenzie's role is he's been really claimed, and like part of me wondered, and I'd said this before, I almost wonder if this was a Dable thing. Like, Dable was the one that, and I don't necessarily think that he didn't like McKenzie, but maybe he wanted McKenzie more of like that gadget role and not so much as like a full-time slot receiver, or he just, they had Beasley, so they ran with Beasley, and that was the schematic.
Yeah. Sometimes that's not more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The ones that I thought, honestly, I think there was 2 guys that really kind of popped to my interest. One of them is Cody Ford. The fact that we've seen David Quessenberry, Greg Mance now stopping in, and the fact that Saffold's out, Bates was out with a little soreness. And then you've seen Doyle as well at guard. I think it's just surprising that Ford had the opportunity again, with another offensive line coach to possibly maybe make his mark. And again, he just keeps kind of just falling back down the depth chart every time. And then the other one that I thought, with the fact that it was such a cluster, was Isaiah Hodgins, just because of the lack of opportunity from his injury history and the fact that he really presents himself as a different, stylistically, a different slot receiver, just purely based on size. I thought maybe he could put himself out there as more of, a bigger kind of target for Josh Allen across the middle. But again, I mean, from what I saw, doesn't have really great hands, which is very surprising because out of college, that was his calling card. He, it was really good hands, and he just looked very clunky. And I don't know, maybe it's just because of how rusty he is from not playing a ton. But I was very disappointed with those two because I feel like they both had huge opportunities to grasp onto jobs that were kind of up in the air, and thus far has just been kind of mediocre at best.
Good call.
Even Bobby Hart got run with the first team ahead of Cody Ford today. So if you want to see where he is, well, right, I mean, we thought he was going to be like a cheap, low cost guy with experience that could come in and play emergency snaps for them. And if he even makes this team right now, which I didn't think I was going to be saying like 3 months ago, if he even makes this team, the guy's going to be inactive on Sunday, even though he can play. Well, he can play. He has played tackle and guard. So he's been the 9th offensive lineman. And if you count Hart running ahead of him today, he might be 10th. So who knows?
I'll say, guys like Tavon Austin have got to love it. Because, man, a guy like Cody Ford not making the roster, one less offensive lineman, that's a spot for Tavon Austin to potentially snap up that punt return job.
Well, and I mean, it's not the reason, but a couple fans asked, and I know Matt, often gets asked questions like this: are there any players where finances are a factor in the decision? And there's not a lot. The Bills roster just isn't built that way. Most of the guys, it's a football decision, and yeah, there's a couple where there's maybe like a tiny bit of a bonus. If you're looking at like a Greg Van Roten or a Greg Mance, and it's Cody Ford does have almost 1.6 million in cap savings, and that's not like some big material number that is gonna. But when we're as tight to the cap as what we are, and you had Bean talking about, hey, if everything happened today, we actually wouldn't even be under, which I don't quite understand the math of, but
exactly.
He knows more than I do, so I'm sure he's right. An extra 1.5, 1.6 million isn't nothing. So it's then to the point where maybe there is a little something that could go along there. And, so at a bare minimum, he's number one with a bullet on my list of, hey, who's this year's day before cut down day trade candidate for a 2023 7th? Cody Ford. He's my number one right now. Some other GM out there still has a second round grade on him, and like, hey, get him in our power gap scheme. We can get him back there road grading, and he'll fit with us. Someone will convince themselves of that.
Right. And I like that. And the one thing I did saw, that you had mentioned earlier was about Darrell Williams. I saw it was like a 1 year, 2.2. And
that was my guess. Like, it would be something like that.
And you trade him out for Cody Ford. You're talking about a $600,000 difference. And that's your Rick Bates. That's your guy that can play guard. He can play tackle. And that, because that was the biggest question is going into this year, because we don't know where Butker's going to be. He's going to start on the pup, but when he's going to come back, who knows? If you could flip him, you got a serviceable guard that can actually do.
First, for a lot of fans, I hate it that there's 3 NFL players named Darrell Williams. There's a running back who went from Kansas City to Arizona, and it's Darrel. And then there's an interior lineman who's a center that went from Kansas City to Jacksonville. That's Darryl. And then there's Darrell Williams, who played for the Bills last year. That's Daryl. And every time the news happens, everybody's like, oh, man, we lost out on Darrell Williams. I'm like, no, actually, I think he's still out there, but I got to go check, too, because everybody reports it wrong. So I'm pretty sure that he's not in Jacksonville and that he's still a free agent. But rightfully, like most of the other name players that are out there, what they're actually waiting for is a commitment of a 53-man roster spot. Those guys could have signed forever. Those guys have standing offers to, hey, come on into camp and compete and see if you make the team. They've had those offers for weeks. All of those guys, whether it's Julio Jones, T.Y. Hilton, Odell Beckham Jr., they're not waiting on like, hey, come and try out and see if you can make it. They're waiting for guaranteed commitments that you're on the 53-man roster. And I think Darrell Williams is kind of borderline of being able to like command that. But as more Ryan Jensen's and as the Bills have more practices where they say, I think at one point I heard today, Sean McDermott literally had to take the starting defensive line out of practice because the offense could not conduct plays.
Yep.
Like, all it takes is a couple more of those, and somebody's going to call up Darrell Williams and give him a roster spot.
Yep. Yeah, I'll tell you, which aside from all of that, I mentioned this earlier. You don't realize how good Von Miller truly is until you see this dude in person. Like, his ability to bend around a tackle, like like Gumby style, flexible, whatever. Like, but he's just, it's one of those things. It's almost like, it's when they talk about like, oh, you got to watch Tom Brady play. Seeing Von Miller in person is one of those, like, is a generational talent. And he's so good. And he makes people look silly out there. And even Deion Dawkins, he's like trying to explain how, Von Miller is able to get around him. He can't even explain it. A competent, starting, very well-paid left tackle could not figure out how to explain what in the hell Von Miller just did to him out there.
A guy that's gone against Jerry Hughes an awful lot and said, like, no shade on Jerry, but this guy's just a different level.
Yeah. It's nasty.
I had a really good conversation with another fan at camp, and that conversation came up. And his exact comment was, he's like, I know you guys weren't old enough to see it like day by day in person. He's like, that's what Bruce was like. He's like, it was those things where you see him going around the corner and you're waiting for him to fall down because every other human you've ever seen at like that angle falls down. Like that, you don't get to keep running in a circle when you're more than 45 degrees to the ground. And you're like, wait, is he gonna, oh my God, he kept going. Oh my God, he got the quarterback. Like it to the rest of us mortals, it defies physics. Like, it doesn't make sense. Your brain tells you, oh, he's going to fall down. Wait, how did he keep going? Like, you watch it and your brain tells you, oh, that guy's about to fall down, and he keeps going around the corner. And of course, those big, huge tackles can't. That's when Deion's talking about it, it was like trying to hit water. Like, you put your arm out there and I wasn't like, I'm ready to punch and make contact, and you just miss and you wouldn't hit anything. And that's also the reason why Von Miller is going to age better into this contract than a lot of either skeptical fans or rival fans think, because it's not just quick twitch explosion. Like, it's the whole repertoire, it's the flexibility. Those are also the Jared Allens, the Michael Strahans, the Reggie Whites, the Julius Peppers, the Bruce Smith. Those guys they age different because they're not the same as us. Right.
And he's 33 doing this. I'm 34 and I get hurt stepping over a baby gate. So I mean, like, it's nonsense. It makes no sense.
We're technically the same species, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, we're not. I get hurt getting out of bed in the morning. He can do things I can never do. Okay, moving on. If the final cut down day was today, and you're Brandon Beane, who is your 53rd player? That one player that you're like, this is my guy. He's going to make the roster. Who is he?
Okay. I would go with one of those cornerbacks, Nick McLeod or Cam Lewis. It's the Bills haven't kept very many cornerbacks over the years. Under Sean McDermott, they like to go light on that cornerback position on that roster. But I think even if Trey White is on that initial 53-man roster and doesn't go to, the injured reserve list or pup list or whichever one you want, I don't really, then even if he does stay on the 53, they're going to need guys to play snaps. And so I think whichever one of those two guys you think is more able to give you outside reps I think you would go with that guy for there. That's why I'm leaning cornerback, just because of the injury to Trey White. And then if he does go on injured reserve or the opening of the season pup list, then it keeps him out for 4 weeks, and then he can come back later. And then maybe they have an injury somewhere else, or what they did last year when Marquez Stevenson came back. They had another spot that they could use to bring him back on the roster and go heavy on wide receivers last year heavier than they normally would.
I think that's right there. And I was debating between the two just for the balance of it is with all the injuries. I think it could be the Greg Mance, Greg Van Roten, Luke Tenuta is keeping a 10th offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. So I do think that it'll be interesting in that could that battle at corner and with Trey's injury push them to keep an 11th DB? Because I think it's pretty firm they're going to keep 6 corners and 4 safeties, and it really just depends who's the 5th corner. Is it Cam Lewis or Nick McLeod? Maybe it's interesting that it's actually 10 even without Trey, and that it's keeping both of them. So I think that's an interesting path Matt laid out, and that it's not impossible that it's 10 DBs without Trey and 10 offensive linemen, and then you're talking about is that now only 5 linebackers? Is that now only 2 tight ends? Is that now, then now you're pulling from somewhere else? Because I think, we know it's only 2 quarterbacks. We know it's 9 defensive linemen. Like, there's a couple spots where, like, hey, this is how many it's going to be. We know it's 4 safeties. Like, there's a couple spots where, like, there's not really much intrigue or nuance to it. And then there's a couple others where, like, well, if you add one here, you got to take it away from somewhere else. Who is that guy? So there's going to be a couple of those that are interesting.
Right. And I feel like that's for me, because I don't think it's necessarily a lock that Benford makes the team. But I like Benford just from his flexibility, because, Sean McDermott now, I feel like a lot of the team is kind of positionless. And I feel like Benford kind of plays that. He could do corner, he could do safety. I know, big nickel isn't necessarily a huge thing, because that means Taron Johnson potentially could come off the field. But in scenarios where maybe you have a Gesicki, lining up over, in the slot, you might need somebody a little bit bigger. I feel like a Benford or a Bernard could play that role stylistically better than Taron Johnson. I think that'd be the only guy that I think would be kind of that cusp guy. That or the other one I thought was really impressive from little bits that I saw was Balin Spector. Just because of he at one point was actually calling the defense, which I thought was pretty impressive for being a late round pick.
Yeah.
So moving on, I'm going to do a quick read for my dentist buddy, my cousin, Zach Mills. A Dentist for Kids offers individual dental treatment for kids of all ages. By providing a relaxed, fun, and encouraging environment, Dr. Zach's goal is to help your child build confidence in their smile and with their overall dental health. A Dentist for Kids is currently accepting new patients, and they participate with most major insurances. If you visit Dr. Zach, mention Buffalo Late Night for $25 off your choice of a custom whitening kit or an electric toothbrush. Call today to set up an appointment with Dr. Zach and his team, 585-538-7230. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Zach is my cousin. I love him to death. He's my bruz. We call it brother and cuz. Weird thing, whatever. But I'll tell you, he is genuinely pretty much the highest rated pediatric dentist in all of Rochester. He's phenomenal. He's a great guy, truly cares about his patients, cares about his practice. And, if you're, at least for when I was a kid, going to the dentist was one of the most traumatic experiences. It's just awful. He makes it the best. He makes it, something that you truly feel good about as a child and as a parent. I know the number one thing as a parent is to always make sure your kids are taken care of. He does that. He does that in spades. So go see him. Tell him I sent you. Moving on. This one I think is kind of fun. I mentioned this to you guys earlier today. Given the opportunity, and this was the end of the season, take out your crystal ball. Tell me what Bills player wins what end of the year award.
So obviously, I think the easiest one is Josh Allen is the betting favorite for MVP. So that's
Josh Allen MVP.
I mean that's a pretty good one. I think that there's some other things that could be fun. I do think that defensive rookie of the year isn't always like the analytically best player. It's oftentimes who makes the most splash plays in primetime games, well, you have the Bills play the most primetime games of any team in the league, and their number one draft pick is at a position where you're surrounded by three other guys who've gotten all-pro votes and the best slot corner in the league. You're going to get tested a fair amount. Kyer Elam could
100%.
have like a Trayvon Diggs kind of season where like a lot of fans are like, yeah, but he gave up like this big play and that big play. And like, yeah, but he got 7 interceptions. And I think it would take like 5, 6, 7 to like get it. But with the number of primetime games the Bills have and the fact that I think he's going to get kind of picked on and targeted, it's not crazy that he could have one of those up and down years where there's probably more big plays than we would like, but also more interceptions. So that if that fell right and he gave up the big plays in the Sunday 1:00 games and gets the interceptions in the primetime games, I could see it. I could see that going down that path.
Yeah, I definitely had him as like right behind Josh Allen in the MVP vote thing as far as something to talk about here. I was actually surprised. I went back and looked at how many cornerbacks were named Defensive Rookie of the Year over the last few years, because I didn't think cornerbacks really got that award other than when they, get 7 interceptions or whatever. So, but 2 of them have won it in the last 7 years. So I didn't like it. It felt more like a linebacker or pass rusher award to me. Yeah. And,
it's always sacks or interceptions, but it does go both ways.
Yeah. But even Jarris Byrd,
It has to be sacks or interceptions, but also in primetime games. Like they need to see them. If it's for a bad team, everybody's like, "Man, that doesn't count."
No, that's 100% accurate. Yes,
it's a media voted award. That's why we never won any awards forever.
Well, yeah. So, just to have this conversation, James Cook is Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't necessarily think is going to get enough touches in the primetime games to quote Greg to get there, but maybe he makes like some highlight reel plays and gets on some fun things. But I don't.
The biggest thing in his favor is that I don't think there's a slam dunk obvious pick anywhere else. Yeah. There might not be a rookie quarterback. Period. Any of the big receivers are on really bad offenses or mixed in with a bunch of other good players and might not get, like the ones who might get crazy volume or like a Drake London and things like that. They're like, are people going to give an award to the Falcons garbage time receiver? So I don't think it's likely, but there's a path where, again, it takes a couple screens to the house in some primetime games, and all of a sudden it's like, well, he did have 850 total yards, and like it's kind of the best anybody did. We also don't know
what Khalil Shakir is going to do too. Shakir is just getting more and more like.
There's a lot of teams that he would get a lot of run for. I don't think the Bills are one of them, but there's a lot of teams I think he would get a lot of run for.
Right. For me, mine, I have one that I think could happen. The other's a dark horse. The one I think, because he's never done it, is Von Miller with defensive MVP. I have a feeling with this type of defense around him, there's a reason he came here, not only to get a Super Bowl, but he just wants to keep adding accolades. I think that could be the one. And then the other one that I think is super dark horse, but I think would be amazing, is Ed Oliver as defensive MVP. If you get Greg Rousseau going, with Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, and then Vaughn on the opposite side, I don't know, man. From everything that everybody that's at camp every day is saying, they're saying Ed Oliver is looking lights out, like a guy that's playing possessed.
I don't know if you're going to have to compare him directly to Aaron Donald, right? And so he's going to have to outplay the baddest man on the planet probably in order to get into that conversation. And so I don't know if he's going to play enough snaps. I don't know what the defensive line rotation is going to look like. One of the interesting things about the Ed Oliver conversation is if we get Kyer Elam and Trey White and the safeties doing a lot better coverage than, say, maybe Levi Wallace did in the past, are they going to be bringing more linebackers into the pass rush? Is Ed Oliver going to have more of a chance to get to the quarterback and actually bring down the quarterback as opposed to the ball getting out sooner? How are offenses, going to adjust to having 4 or 5 studs in the Bills secondary.
Right.
Are they going to do the quicker passes to get away from the pass rush and the safeties?
Yeah. No, it's going to be super interesting to see.
For sure. Yeah, and I think Von Miller is just going to be the linchpin to the success of this defense, because he's just going to be able to just cave that offensive line. So, and then finally, not finally, I have 2 more things. Isaiah McKenzie, buy or sell week 1 wide receiver 3.
I think you have to buy.
There's
just way too much of a drumbeat. And I want to say, guys like Joe Biscaglia, guys like if you look at like Sal Capaccio does his 90-man roster, it's a super helpful tool. It's not ranked. Like it's also kind of a depth chart, and that he hasn't updated that since like June, and it's the last of it still has Isaiah McKenzie 3rd, and it did going in. Biscaglia had him there. There was a lot of a drumbeat. I was 100% in the camp of I think Crowder's going to be the primary slot, and McKenzie will be the gadget guy plus 20% extra. He might go from 29 targets to 40 targets, and that hey, it's a little bit more, and that there's just way too much, including, Thomas, to your point, the comments from Sean McDermott, who is the king of coach speak and saying nothing in press conferences. And for him to say that, he's getting himself ready for a primary role, betting against it would be crazy. Now, Jamison Crowder is a professional slot receiver. I don't think he's going away. I don't think that he's going down without a fight. And I think he's going to be right there available. And a piece of me, the same questions I had coming in, there are things that I think Jamison Crowder is better at than Isaiah McKenzie. I just think it's now past the tipping point where I don't think it matters.
But we've also only had 2 padded practices. So if you're going to
somewhere Jeremy White's yelling preseason promise.
If you're going to bet against it, that's why you're going to bet against it. You're going to say that, McKenzie's going to start getting jammed at the line, or he's going to start having to deal with all the traffic or whatever it happens to be when the pads really start flying, and maybe that is the case. But I with what you've seen over the last week, and to Greg's point earlier, people have been talking about this since minicamp. It's not like it's, but also that was without pads on too. So that's the little caveat that you have there in the back of your mind, like what's going to happen when we get full contact or whatever.
Yeah, and not to do a cheap plug, but it's fine. I don't care. The Film Room for Cover 1, great show. They had Isaiah McKenzie on this.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Big fan. They had Isaiah on, and that was one thing that he mentioned. Becoming a more nuanced route runner, and understanding that he couldn't, just be like Tyreek and fly by guys, that, there might be different things that he can do to make himself really a more viable option. And I think, like he said, he wanted to be like Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley, I was talking again with Hansel, he was saying, Cole Beasley's feet might be some of the best, in terms of, slot receivers, just because of what he's been able to do, creating space, finding it, some open area and getting there. I think that's what you're going to see with McKenzie, is him trying to not necessarily duplicate, but trying to, in the ether, replicate it so that he can be a better receiver. And from all accounts thus far, he's done that. And he's got speed to kind of take it in boot. So,
for a guy as confident as he is, I thought he was very transparent and very humble in the way that he approached the offseason, in knowing what opportunity this was, knowing a lot of guys don't get a chance to break out in their 7th year. This isn't a common situation. So when he talked about the different guys that he went to watch film of and how they run and how they work and how they get open, you heard some of the things of what he was working on with Cole Beasley. If anyone saw, Cole wrote him a really nice message on Instagram talking about how much time they've spent together talking and working in the offseason, about how proud he was of getting him ready for this opportunity. I think that McKenzie was very genuine in, he knows this right now is his window, and he kept talking about it. It's my turn, and that he has put the time in. there are plenty of people, many on our staff included, who were skeptical of whether he had the full repertoire. Everyone knows the ball in his hands, he's a weapon. Like, no one doubts that he was, a dangerous player with the ball in his hands. It was, could he secure it? Could he make the catch? Could he get open against zone coverage, which is 70% of NFL defensive coverages? Could you find those soft spots to then get the ball in your hands, to then do the stuff that you can do? And so far, he's showing that he's put in the work to do that.
Right. And it's a big year for him. With 1 year left after this on his contract, this is the type, if he blows up this season, he's going to get a very nice payday.
Well, heck, he can make up to $8 million with the deal he's got now. So, I mean,
right.
He can make money
got a nice
now.
Payday, in my opinion. I thought he made out on that contract. I think they were looking at him as that, Cole Beasley replacement. Even then, like you were saying.
Yeah, having up to $4 million each year. He can make more money than he's made in the rest of his contracts combined.
I mean, look at Crowder's contract. I mean, he's half of that. Less
literally.
than $2 million. Yeah, right, or just $2 million. Yeah,
yeah. I think he basically got a 1 year version. Because I think Bean basically bet on. He's like, hey, we don't mind paying one of you guys $4 million. He's like, I don't know which one of you is going to do it, but here you go. You both have a $2 million deal that could be worth up to $4 million and change. They just gave McKenzie a 2 year version of that same thing, and he's like, well, somebody's going to make $4 million. We'll see who it is.
We do have a question from Let's Talk 716 Sports, Robbie.
Robbie.
He asked, prior, he said, what have you seen during training camp? I asked him to elaborate, and he asked for wide receiver and tight end battles. I don't know why I said that so weird. Wide receiver and tight end battles. What have you two seen? Anything that really pops for you? Any specific topping points?
There hasn't been a ton at tight end. I mean, honestly, it's been the lack of a battle. There's Dawson Knox. And then I will say the pads coming on matters a lot. OJ Howard was not signed for what he was going to look like against air in one-on-one drills. It's that he's a big, powerful dude who's a good blocker, and that he got open for a nice seam route on a deep ball, and that there were some nice highlights finally for that. The fact that I think Tommy Sweeney or Weidemeyer or Quentin Morris probably had a chance to make that more of a battle. The fact that they didn't, I think now that the pads are on and blocking is going to come into play, I think it's going to separate itself a little bit there. So I don't know that there's anybody outside of Knox I'm super excited about a tight end. And same idea. I don't know that whether it's Tavon Austin, whether it's Isaiah Hodgins, whether it's any Marcus Stevenson, anybody else who probably had a chance here, especially with Kumaro missing time. I don't know that there was a ton of guys who really staked their claim at demanding a seventh wide receiver or taking the sixth one.
Yeah, that's the point. They're talking about back end of the roster guys for all of it, really. Like, I was surprised I didn't hear more about Howard in that first week of training camp. But I mean, you're talking about, are they going to keep 3 tight ends, or are they going to go down to 2 plus Reggie Gilliam? I think that's probably the biggest question at tight end right now. And we haven't heard a ton about how many 2 tight end sets, or even, the jumbo with 2 tight ends and fullback at the same time all on the field yet. But again, it's early. So, it's more back end of the roster stuff than guys that are actually going to see the field on a consistent basis right now.
Yeah. I will say, from when I was there and the same day as Greg was, they were doing a lot of 22 personnel and kind of mixing it up, a lot of 21 personnel. So a lot of different things that they didn't do as much last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see a little bit, different wrinkles. The one I'm interested in is Weidemeyer, just because, like you said, I feel like he would translate better with pads on, just because, because the RAS score. And the funny thing is, I was talking Tim Settle. Well, actually, Weidemeyer's RAS score was a 0.98. Tim Settle's was a 0.88. So it's not out of the question that somebody could actually potentially show their stuff in the right scenario. And after camp on last Monday, Weidemeyer stayed. He kept going through drills. He was going through, work a good 30, 40 minutes after practice ended. So, I mean, he's got the aspirations to be good. It just depends on if he has enough time. I could see him being a practice squad guy. I don't think they'd have a problem stashing him there. It just depends on whether or not he's going to be able to show enough in a very, very short window. So, and then finally, I've been asking every single person I've had the last 4 weeks on the show. Love finding out what people have to say. I asked my brother first. and loved his answers. So, would love to hear from you guys. If you could tell people who have never experienced what it's like to be a Bills fan in synopsis, what would you say?
You can lead this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the right way to describe it, because I have to include, when I was a little kid and the Bills were awesome, and then I have to include when I was like a young adult and they were terrible. So it's like, I don't know. It was always fun, even when they were bad. Like, it really was, like, because the people that were there, I don't know, it just always felt like we were all in the same boat, whether they were doing really well or not doing really well, and we were all commiserating together one way or the other. Yeah, so pain. Yeah, there you go. But like, it just always felt like we were in it together as fans, and at least that's what my perspective was. And whether it was complaining about the same guys or celebrating the same guys, it just feels like that togetherness piece that I've always experienced.
Yeah, it's super well said, and that I think it's, there is a difference when you talk about, when you live in places like Miami and in Los Angeles and San Diego and other places like that, there is a difference of what the team means and what it represents, and that the Bills are the second smallest market in the NFL, and that they're a market that, honestly, if the NFL was starting now and giving out 32 franchises, we probably don't get one. And the fact that when it sounds cheesy when you say it means more, but it does. Like, it means more, and that the people that are from there and what it means and what it brings, those memories of times with your family, with your loved ones, with your best friends, with the people that you care about, and that it represents that time together, and it represents something that means more than just, some dumb sports team. It really is kind of a central point that families and groups gravitate around, and the events when you see each other gravitate around, and that just becomes part of how you know people and how you met them and how you spend time together. So it just becomes more than just a team we root for, because it's a central part of so much that we do. Like, my favorite memories growing up are big Sunday dinners, rigatoni and meatballs, watching the Bills game and listening to my grandfather and my uncles swear at the TV and learning about football in a very, very graphic manner.
And learning about swear words.
All the swear words. I learned all of the swear words, and the cherries in the jar I wasn't allowed to eat that were in the middle of the table. And all the things that, that it's just vivid memories of how I learned about the game and how I remember my family was around Bills games. And that, it's a fun thing. And I think that there's an awful lot of people that are like that, where many of their fondest, most favorite memories, things when they talk about their favorite times with their dad, their mom, their brother, how they met their spouse. Like, it's just, I don't think there's as many places where as many of those things are tied around a football team, and that an awful lot of them are with us.
Right. And, for a guy that, my wife's pregnant, I have a son on the way in January. And for me, it's exciting to think about, like, passing that on to him, and, Google Voice going there, having, passing that love for something on to him. And the other part I always kind of think about is, like, when you're going out and about and you see that Bills logo in a place that you wouldn't actually think to see it, man, there's like a sense of just like pride and like deep-rooted love that you get for that. Like my wife and her family, they go to St. Martin every other year. Lo and behold, in the Caribbean, there is a Buffalo Bills bar in the Caribbean on the island of St. Martin, which is amazing because the guy's from Rochester and they sell Swagle's hot dogs there, and they got Bills stuff all over the place. But I'll tell you, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be a Bills fan, and an awful thing at the same time. But right now we get to enjoy the best of the best with Josh Allen at the helm. And, it's been a long time coming, but it's an incredible feeling at that. Now, for everybody that has been watching, or anybody that, is going to watch, however you pod, come and check us out, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. You can check out other different episodes that we've had in the past. We've had fantastic guests. Truly, I'm very privileged to be able to talk to some amazing people, including these two fine gentlemen tonight. And you can check out all the content we've had so far, as well as on YouTube and Twitch. You'll see everything that we've had. But Greg, Matt, tell them where they can find you.
You guys can find us. We're over at our fan site, Cover One. We have a lot of fun being able to have shows all week long. We're getting ready for our regular season run where we'll have preview shows, our post-game show, 2 shows every night of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all the way through. You can check us out at cover1.net. And now you can sign up for Cover One Pass. Come and hang out with us, get our premium membership, hang out in the Slack channel, come and be able to read all the awesome stuff that we're doing. I actually did a Salary Cap 101 series for our premium members where I did breakdowns of all the different terms and things you hear thrown around all the time in quick little 2-3 minute videos. So a bunch of those. So all kinds of fun stuff. You can come check us out and have a good time.
And over at BuffaloRumblings.com, we've also got the Buffalo Rumblings YouTube channel, Buffalo Rumblings Podcast Network. Lots of ways, depending on how folks like to interact with their Bills news and information. We've got lots of different ways to get there. And actually, we just announced our all of our staff changes and our podcast schedule and vidcast schedule today, August 1st, because this is when we kick it into overdrive. So we're getting ready for the season 2.
Beautiful. And you know what? I've always been the guy that puts my foot in my mouth, but you know what? I'm going to say it full force. Support your local content creators, your small guys, the guys that have started from the bottom and they're working their way up. These are the ones that are working hard, still have full-time jobs, and are doing this for the love of the Bills, for the love of, providing high-quality content to people that want to hear it. So support them. Let them know that you love them. Let them know that you love their content and what they provide, because it does mean a lot to them. And it does mean a lot that you actually listen and hear and, appreciate what they do. So love everybody that's been watching this. I appreciate it if you've been watching Buffalo Late Night. Again, my name is Thomas DeLoss. You can find me at the Thomas DeLoss. As always, I appreciate you, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
The Bills make me wanna shout. Kick your heels up and shout. Throw your hands up and shout. Throw your head back